The identity shift that makes discipline effortlessly. Neuroscience explain. And here's what nobody tells you about discipline. The people who seems to be effortlessly disciplined, the people who wake up early, the people who train hard, and the people who get things done without negotiating with themselves every single morning, they are not fighting their impulses anymore. They stopped a long time ago. And it's not because they have more willpower than you. And it's also not because they are wired differently, but it's because somewhere along the way they made a shift. A very specific shift that changed everything. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that shift is, the neuroscience behind why it works, and a step-by-step process that you can start using today. And if you've ever felt like discipline is a constant battle, like you're just white-knuckling your way through each and every week, stay with me, because this video will change everything. Alright, so I spent years, like genuinely years, trying to fix my habit. I read every book, I tried every system, I color-coded my planner, I downloaded all the productive app, I made my vision boards and all that, but yet I kept failing. Not dramatically, not in some catastrophic way, but just quietly and consistently. Sometimes I'll do well for 2 weeks, then drift, and then do well again, slide back. I couldn't figure out why, because the information wasn't the problem, and I knew what to do. But it wasn't until I started going deep into the science, like the neuroscience of behavior change, right? Then I took all that experience and knowledge that I collected over the years and in my journey, and then I came up with this book, Mental Toughness, Unbreakable Mind. So I put all the knowledge and all the experiences in this book. You can get it, it's available on Amazon. I'll link it on the video below, right? So when I did that, then I finally understood the real issue. I wasn't failing at discipline. I was failing at identity. I was trying to build a disciplined life while still thinking of myself as someone who's not disciplined. And your brain, your actual neurological wiring, will not let you sustain behavior that contradict who you believe you are. So let's start there with the real reason, discipline fails. Most people approach discipline as a behavior problem. They say things like, I need to start going to the gym, I need to stop eating junk food, or I need to be more productive with my work. These are all behavioral goals, and there's nothing wrong with wanting those things, but the research is clear. Behavior change without identity change is almost always temporary, and here's why. Your brain is a prediction machine. Everything you do, every decision you take, and every habit and every impulses is filtered through one core question your brain is consistently asking you. Is this consistent with who I am? This is what psychologists call self-concept consistency. Your brain is not trying to optimize for your goals. It's trying to maintain coherence with your identity. So if you see yourself as someone who struggles with mornings, your brain will actively and often unconsciously sabotage your 5 a.m. alarm. Not because you're weak, but because waking up 5 a.m. feels like a contradiction, and it feels like someone else's behavior. And this is the trap that most people fall into. They build routines, they white-knuckle it for a few weeks, and then, life happens. A bad night happened, a stressful week, and then the moment willpower runs out, behavior snaps back to whatever is consistent with the identity. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habit. The idea that the goal isn't to run a marathon, but it's to become a runner. But I want to go a little bit deeper than that. I want to show you the neuroscience of exactly how identity encodes in your brain. And I want to show you how you can deliberately rewire it. So let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain. Your sense of self, your identity, is not stored in one place. It is a distributed network. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network, or the DMN. This is the system that activates when you are daydreaming, or simply when you're reflecting on your past, or just thinking about the future. And here's what's critical. The DMN, which is the default mode network, is also the system that processes self-referential information. In other words, it's where your self-concept lives. Now, your brain is extraordinarily efficient. It doesn't want to reevaluate each and every decision from scratch. So it builds what we call neural shortcuts, which is basically automatic pathway that triggers behavior based on context. And those shortcuts are built around identity. When an action becomes identity consistent, it stops requiring effort. It's transitioned from the prefrontal cortex, which is your thinking and effortful part of your brain, then it goes into the basal ganglia, where automatic behavior lives. That is the neurological definition of effortless discipline. It's not like disciplined people don't feel like staying in bed some mornings or don't feel like doing anything at all. It's that getting up feels more automatic than staying in bed. Here's the good news for you. Neuroplasticity means your brain can build new pathways, new identity consistent pathways at any age and at any stage. This is not fixed, and you are not fixed. And hear me out, this is so important. You cannot do it through forceful repetition alone. You have to do it through what I call identity hacking. And our process starts with one very specific thing. So, identity shift has 3 stages, and I call it the ABC framework. And I want you to remember it. A stands for articulate the identity. B stands for behavior from it. C stands for collect the evidence. So, let's break it down. A stands for articulate the identity. This is where most people skip a step. They don't define the identity first. They just define the goal. So they say things like, I want to lose 20 kilo or 20 pounds. This is a goal. It's not an identity. Compare it to something like, I am someone who takes care of their body. Now that's an identity. The language matters here. Very important. Your brain responds differently to identity statement than to goal statements. So when you say things like, I am, you activate the self-referential processing in your default mode network. You begin encoding that statement as part of your self-concept. So, step 1 is write down, not just think about it, actually write it down, an identity statement in present tense and in first person. Don't write something like I want to be or I'm trying to be. You always put I am. It should be something like I am someone who does hard things, or I am mentally tough, or I am a person who shows up, especially when things get hard. You are sending a very powerful message to your brain when you do that. Right, let's move on. B stands for behavior from it. Here's where the rubber meets the road. And here's where I want to challenge something that you've probably heard before. I'm very sure you've heard something like fake it till you make it, right? And I understand the sentiment, but neurologically, faking doesn't rewire anything. Action does. And I write it in a couple of first pages of my book. Action is responsible for all reality. So the key is to ask yourself every morning one question. What will the person I've described do right now after you've written your statement, your identity statement? Not something like, what do I feel like doing? Or, what's the easiest way? No. It should be something like, what would this identity version of me do right now? Okay, then when you do that, even if it's small or even if it's not perfect, remember that a 5-minute workout still count, and a single paragraph written down still count, and most importantly, 1 glass of water instead of a glass of soda still counts, because your brain is watching you. Every time you act in alignment with your stated identity, you are laying down a neural thread, and a neural thread becomes neural cables, and cables becomes highways, and highways becomes automatic. That's how it works. Let's move on. C stands for collect the evidence. And this is the step that brings everything together. At the end of each day, at minimum each week at least, you need to actively acknowledge the moments where you showed up as this particular new identity that you've written down. Not to celebrate lazily, but to reinforce the neural patterns. Okay? Your brain updates its self-mode based on evidence. If you give it more evidence that you are a disciplined person, actual behavioral evidence, it will update the model slowly at first, but it's going to get faster as you do it over and over. And keep a simple log always. Write down, today I behaved like the person I'm becoming. Very important. You're sending a very powerful message to your brain. You have to note it down. Even if it's 3 sentences, that's all it takes. It doesn't have to be a massive long paragraph. This is not journaling for feelings. This is neurological evidence collection for identity reinforcement. That's the difference. let's get a little bit tactical. Here's the exact identity hacking process that I use with my coaching client. This is the same process that you can find on in my book, Mental Toughness, Unbreakable Mind, but I'm going to walk you through it right now. Step 1, diagnose your current identity narrative. Before you can shift, you need to know where you're shifting from, right? So grab yourself a piece of paper right now and complete this statement. Honestly, when it comes to discipline, I am someone who, complete the blanks. Write whatever that comes naturally. Don't filter it, because most people write things like, I am someone who starts things but never finishes. I mean, what's that? Or I'm someone who's, not really a morning person. That right there is it's the narrative that your brain is running, and that is what's generating your current behavior. So you have to be careful with what you say to yourself. Step 2, write the counter identity. Now directly oppose that statement. Write down who you choose to be. Not a fantasy version, not someone unrecognizable to you, but just one step forward. If your current narrative is, I always quit when things get hard, so the counter identity isn't going to be, I am an elite special force operator. No, we're not trying to be superhuman overnight. We're going a little bit step by step. So yours might be like, I am someone who stays in the discomfort 1 minute longer than I used to. Small, believable, identity level shift. That's what we're targeting. Step 3, install a daily identity anchor. Now, an identity anchor is one small behavior that you perform each and every day, without exception, that symbolizes, your new identity. It doesn't have to be impressive. It has to be consistent, because consistency is what the brain reads as identity, not intensity, not perfection, but consistency. For some people, it can be making their bed. For others, can be taking a cold 30-second shower every morning. The behavior itself is almost secondary, but the signals it sends to your brain is primary. Okay, it's sending to your brain that this is who I am right now. So step 4, use identity language in your self-talk. Every time you catch yourself saying things like, I'm not a disciplined person, or I can't help it, or that's just who I am, because it happens, okay, interact it immediately, out loud if you can, and replace it with something like, that's not who I am anymore. This is not toxic positivity. This is neuro-linguistic identity hygiene. The stories you tell about yourself becomes the software your brain runs your behavior on. Updates the software. That's what we're targeting. Step 5, find your reference group. This is the most underrated factor in identity shift. Your brain is deeply social. It models identity partially based on the people around you. If everyone in your environment treats discipline as an option, your brain will do the same thing. If everyone in your environment treats showing up as non-negotiable, guess what? Your brain will do the same thing. You don't have to ditch your friends. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is this: you need to find people in person, online, in books, in podcasts as you're watching me, who embodied, the identity that you are building, because proximity to that identity accelerates the encoding process. Now look, here's the truth I want to leave you with. Discipline is not a personality trait that you're born with or without. It is a neurological pattern. A neurological pattern can be changed. The reason you've struggled is not weakness, it's strategy. You've been trying to change behavior without touching the identity. And that's almost like trying to renovate a house and leaving the foundation cracked. Fix the foundation first. In your case, you have to fix the identity first, and then watch how your behaviors will follow. Not through grinding willpower, but through coherence, through your brain finally doing what it's always trying to do, which is to keep you consistent with who you are. So the difference is, now you get to choose who that is. And if this video helped you to see something that you've never seen before, please hit the like button, because it genuinely helps this channel reach the right people who need to hear this kind of message. And if you want to go deep into the neuroscience of mental toughness and identity hacking, you can check out my book, Mental Toughness, Unbreakable Mind. Is available on Amazon and on Take a Lot, South Africa, if you are in South Africa. It's an easy read. It's not boring. It's pretty much easy read. You can check it on Amazon, and it's going to be available on Amazon. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, because I publish video each and every week on how to become mentally tough. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you on the next one.